Welcome back to New Amsterdam Radio, the podcast for creatives, thinkers, and doers. It is I, the mayor, Flobo Boys, in the mayor's office, hang with people who are doing things that are incredibly important. And well, over the past year and a half, a lot of the listeners to the show, a lot of creators have been asking about the rise of artificial intelligence. Is it a friend? Is it a foe? Can it help with productivity? Is it something we should be very cautious of? And well, I didn't have the answers, so I went out and found someone who does have the answers. Please welcome Raghavan and Lakshmana, who is going to really drill down what it means for artificial intelligence, productivity, and more. How's it going, sir?
Hey, Flobo Boys. Thanks for having me. It's going great.
Well, you know what? Thanks so much for taking time to be on the show. And well, we were discussing this before you went live, but you have an expansive experience in all three of these areas.
Yeah, I have been working as a software engineer for a little over a decade now, building web applications and AI systems. I started my career with Microsoft. I worked with Bing Search, Windows operating system. I have worked for Airbnb and I worked for some smaller startups. And now I'm working for a company called Atlassian. All
Oh
these
yeah.
companies I have been touching web apps, AI, productivity. Um, yeah,
Well, that's two things that's interesting because I'm a Bing first search engine user, and as a viewer, Formula One, I think Atlas is like the sponsor of Williams Race Team. That's kind of a cool
yeah.
thing. Well, let's get down to the brass tacks because a lot of our listeners on the show are interacting with artificial intelligence. And I do say that there has been strides in that area. I mean, that's kind of standard operating procedure, but there's some people who are kind of concerned about the rise of it and its uses in practicality. Is it a friend? Is it a foe? Is it somewhere in between? Where do you land on that?
Hmm. I think we don't know yet. When you look back at history, how industrial revolution changed the way people looking at their daily wages, looking earning their daily bread, AI will impact the way how people are looking at their daily life. Take, for example, autonomous cars that may very well displace how the Uber drivers and Lyft workers are today.
Mhm.
A drone delivery may completely change the way how DoorDash operates in the future.
Oh yeah.
I see very accelerating growth in the terms of coding, programming. AI is catching up very well in that space. So the low level tasks for programmers can be easily displaced. So that is definitely a very good utilitarian value for people to gain out of AI. And how that is going to impact the society, is it a friend or foe? We need few more years to answer that question.
Yeah. I I just feel like there's a lot of misconceptions around about what it does and the applications it could be used for, especially those coming from the creative side, right? We see the fear of they're taking our artists and our and our art, but on the other side, you can tell how it can be used for practical tools. And what's something that we get wrong as like general populace who may not be working with AI exclusively day to day, we may hear it casually. Is there something we're missing or something we should be educated on when we talk about the
Hmm.
advances it can actually give us?
So very good question. A lot of times when I meet the content writers or artists, the very question they may ask is, will my job be displaced by Midjourney or ChatGPT? Um, I think it's a mixed response over there. You can't say it will or it will not. People who are creating quality art will still thrive. They may flourish. AI will improve their productivity rather than taking the opportunities out of them. But
Yeah.
if you look at people um, who are employing these content writers or artists, if they want to create a lot of quantity over quality, I think they may tend to move towards AI. One misconception which is very prevalent in the society today is AI is going to make all the decisions in the future, and so human intelligence is not going to be valuable anymore. That is absolutely not true. Humans created this technology, and we are always creating things which will make humans more productive. And I think it is also responsible for the industry and the governance to make sure the AI is going to make humanity more humane. Um, yeah, yeah. I don't know if I answered your question, but these are the thoughts which came upon my mind when you asked that question.
Well, that is a fascinating concept. Humanity being more humane. Can you help us understand that a little bit better?
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. When you drive a car, like when you are when if you lived in 80s, maybe there was a cart, and as the time transcended, we started moving towards car. But no one thought that car will make decisions on behalf of you. Maybe it will make you move faster to reach from A to B than the time it took on a cart. But today, if you see how, for take for example, autonomous cars,
Hmm.
how you may go from point A to point B, maybe fully decided by that car rather than you making any decisions.
Yeah.
Um, Applying that idea towards rest of the life where AI may take some of the decisions, maybe someone is in a court and in future we have AI judges and how that may make a decision, that is very well be ingrained in the way how that AI model is trained. So when I say a good AI should make humanity more humane,
Hmm.
is um, is to look at the way how we fundamentally um, train, develop, deploy these AI models across the life cycle of the model, not just looking at the end use of it, rather than taking a holistic view of AI and from the data collection, data cleansing, creating, training the models, testing them, and deploying them throughout the space. We need to think about putting humans and the ethical values in the center of it. Um, which is what I mean by a good AI will make humanity more humane.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Like we were talking about this also before we went live. I had a chance to check out your Substack, the DevDen, which is a fantastic destination if you really want to learn more about productivity. Which I have questions about that just quite a moment. But you had an article about the 4 pillars of trust in AI, an accountability paradox article. It was about transparency, accountability, fairness, and privacy. And we talked about the ethical standards in AI, and I wonder who is going to be able to police that? Will it be other humans? Is it a particular society? Will we work together to find a code of rules that works for everyone?
Yeah, you might have done a lot of homework. That's a very good question. Who is going to make the decision? I think it's a very distributed um, decision making system, starting from the companies which develop them all the way to the governing bodies which approve them until the end user who is going to pay for them. They need to be mindful about how the decisions are made and what are the uh, trade-offs the AI considers when it is making a decision.
Mm,
Transparency is the key. When an AI model decides to conduct a surgery and it chooses to do method A versus method B, it should be transparent about communicating upfront to some authority who is going to approve that. Okay, you can choose A versus B rather than that being a black box. Today, most of the AI products and models tend to be a black box. People don't really know why a decision is made. They would only know what is the decision, so that
mhm.
why is still important. Um, Privacy is a very interesting factor, and it's a double-edged sword. When you want the AI to be more personalized towards you, it is it is necessary that you need to open up some of your data to the AI, but that data should be sandboxed only to your usage. And I think that is very important in terms of building the trust. A lot of times, the data, what you ingest into the AI, may get used against you. We don't know how, but it may. Especially the biometric information, getting a face recognized among a crowd. These are all very sci fi, scary things. Um, we,
Sci-fi scary. I love it. Yeah,
yeah,
the boogeyman cometh. But it was an
absolutely.
interesting take on that, because we talk about what it means for the boundaries of what quote unquote the robots can do, and that can
Yeah.
be an evolving decision as time, society, things we allow evolve. But one thing you did mention was about privacy. And if you've been following anything in the data privacy space in the past 10 or 15 years, policies seem to have come thick and fast. I mean, there was COPPA, there was GDPR, there was CCPA here in California. I mean, how do you keep yourself abreast of the changes in data privacy? It seems to be almost constant.
Mm, yeah. I think to most part, that is a corporate responsibility. If you work for a big corporation and they're dealing with a lot of data, there will be governing bodies inside that corporation who will enforce them. Take, for example, if you work for a search engine company, there may be governing bodies who will enact the GDPR and conduct audits regularly to make sure the data doesn't live more than X number of days.
Mhm.
The EU AI Act is trying to enforce certain level of privacy regulations on how the data can be handled, but we I don't see that getting enforced as much as GDPR or other like California laws. It's going to happen. It is going to happen, and it is mostly the corporate responsibility to make sure they enforce them.
Yeah. And is it usually a company responsibility for our own privacy as end users? Do we have any say when it comes to protecting our data? Or is it kind of like cross our fingers and hope that our data is never exploited?
yeah, yeah. I think it's a hybrid approach. If you use Google search, you can turn off your search history, and to a large extent, I believe they respect it. They don't store that data.
Mhm.
Same, I think it happens with ChatGPT. There's a personalization memory which you can turn off so it doesn't record anything about you to carry forward to the future. I still keep them on because I want to build personal intelligence about me, but it is a choice which should be given to the end user, and the end user should be able to control them.
Well, that's a fascinating dynamic, because I'm with you. I understand that my data can be used for different things, but there's a part of me that kind of wants that personalized experience. But I
Mm.
know the idea of, like, the scary idea of your data is being tossed in some like cauldron, and people are looking at stuff can be very scary for some. Like, what's been the difference of approaches? Is there a way to think of it that's superior than the other? Should we be more conscious and be more discerning with our data, or should we be more open to having it used for third party situations?
Mm. It's a very personal choice. Someone living somewhere in India may not want their data to be tracked, but someone living in the same country doing some other job may really want their data to be tracked and get more analytics out of it. Um, so, giving that choice to the end user seems to be a very flexible approach
Mhm.
rather than companies making a decision on what end user would like. Saying that, when you build a technology product, making such a decision is expensive. You need to build the engineering muscle to support a capability like that. So it's it's really a gray area where the corporate has the authority to make a decision what they really want to give control to the end user, but the end user may want as much control as they want. So yeah, corporations need to meet somewhere in between.
Yeah. Just as a personal side, if I know somebody who's more protective of their private data, is there something they can do today to arm
Hmm.
themselves more than a normal person?
That's a very good question. Um, there is a huge surge in the online community. If you go to Hacker News, Reddit, people are trying to run the LLMs locally on their machine without connecting to the internet at all. You can today download the Llama model, which is Facebook's LLM models. You can run it locally, and there are very clear instructions. It's not complex. Someone who doesn't do programming can still run them locally, and you can have your own chat GPT kind of system without going anywhere outside of your computer's network connections. So that is still possible, but that has its own trade-offs, right? If you're going to use something on the cloud, there is a huge army of engineers working on it versus you using these open source models which may be limited in capability. Yeah,
Yeah.
individual needs to make a decision.
Right. Definitely a personal choice, but if you decide to do something that's more protective of your data, you should have options to do so. Makes
Mhm.
sense. Totally makes sense to me. In advance of this interview, I was kind of floored that you were also passionate about developer productivity, not because of the pursuit, but because how do you find the time to juggle so many things at once, my friend?
Maybe that's why I'm interested about productivity.
Fair. When did you realize that was something that you really enjoyed to do?
Hmm. I think I'm a type A person who wants everything in numbers and want everything to be organized. I never had a structured approach for it, but like since I remember I have been using computers, I try to organize files. Maybe that is my OCD, where I want to keep everything in an organized way. That slowly evolved into me reading about things like getting things done, a framework which is widely used. I started using GTD framework, which is the Getting Things Done framework, few years ago, and found that really helped me in a in how I deal with the influx of information which is coming into me. Today, there's a lot of different sources where you get inputs coming in, but you need a structured way to organize them and act on them. I believe productivity systems which I research on or I started using helped me do that. That kind of increased my interest towards them. It's more of a cycle. I found some problem, started exploring something, found interest on that, and then like iterated around that.
There's a lot of things that distract us from being as efficient as we can. If I want to do something today, help me out. What's the first step to get myself in that productive path?
Yeah, you should delete your TikTok first.
No, but there's so many dances. I love to get down. No, I totally makes sense. But on the productivity on the developer side, they have different challenges over there. What is something that you've seen in your experience that tends to be trending as far as a roadblock of getting things done?
Interesting. So your question is in terms of productivity over the
It-
developer side.
yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that's a very interesting space. And with the AI trend these days, if you go to Twitter, people call something called the vibe coding. They use Cursor or any IDE which has integrated AI, and you simply speak to them in English. It will create your end-to-end software application for you. So that is where we are. But it's a spectrum of things. As a developer is not only going to write programming or write code all the time. There
Mhm.
is different phases of development. Um, you start with collecting requirements, you come up with some architectural design, you develop them, you test them, and you deploy them. All these facets has its own way of making it more structured. Take, for example, collecting requirements. I try to collect as much as data in a very raw format. And with the help of LLM models these days, I'm able to create them into a structured document, which I can then share. And in terms of creating architecture, I think this still goes back to AI. Maybe I have a recency bias. I don't know what I would have spoken about before the AI world. But now I can go to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to create a flowchart. It may give me a bunch of instructions. I can go to Mermaid flowchart, paste that. It'll give me a complete flow diagram of how my code should be. And then about writing code, we have a lot of different tools. Um, yeah, developer productivity, I believe, also comes in the form of learning. To be a successful developer, you need to keep yourself up to date.
Mhm.
Um, I I use a technique called the para method: projects, areas, resources, archives.
Okay.
I organize all the data. Like if you look at my bookmark, it will have these four folders. If you go to my Google Drive, it will have the four folders: projects, areas, resources, archives. So any data which I want to research about may go inside the category of area, and I may have like a different area where I research about my fitness, my um, programming language. Like, for example, I want to learn Rust. I will have a separate folder for that. So organizing this data helps me reach the information I want quicker. That that is one of the impediments. When you have something in your mind and you want to execute it, the number of steps between them should be as less as possible. So organizing these data helps me reduce the number of blocks.
So helpful and so valuable. A lot of developers have to do all that stuff at a high level, and there's usually a budget or time constraint. So you got to be efficient and quick. So I appreciate that. And I also appreciate your time being here on New Amsterdam Radio, just learning more about you, learning about the changes and rise of artificial intelligence. But now here's the fun part. If someone's listening right now and they want to connect with you or learn more about you, how do they go about doing that?
Good question. There are few ways. I would say LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is always open. My Substack. I write very frequently on Substack. Substack is a good place for people to connect with me. Devden .raghavan.studio. That will take them to the Substack. They can connect. They can ask any questions they have. It's free, and yeah, I think that's a good way to start connecting with me.
And I could personally vouch for DevDen. It is a treasure trove of information and insight. Sometimes you get one or the other, you get both over there. Thank you so much for the time in New Amsterdam Radio, man. I learned a lot. Hopefully, to have you back in the future episodes, we can go more different topics. And I appreciate you and what you do. And hopefully, we see each other down the road.
Yeah, thank you, Flubber Bias. It was great talking to you, and hope to connect with you again in the future.
Stay.